Okay, good morning once again, everyone. Thanks for being with us today. It is Thursday, May 7th, 2026. And then, as always, this is the audio edition to the Daily Trade Strategy Briefing. NFA compliance, Rule 2-29C. You know it, love it. You know the whole deal when it comes to that. Let's get that out of the way. Had to leave it up there for, I don't know what the time period is that's required to leave it up there. 30 seconds, a minute, I don't really know. But as long as it's displayed. No apologies necessary for my absence. Thank you, John. Thank you, John. I don't normally take days off, but again, unavoidable. But also had a nice lunch with my wife, so that was good. John says I had to engage my thought process myself and take responsibility. Yep. So, what we do here, right? You're coming together as a group is to engage, learn, get better at our craft, right? Learn how to think. I think one of the biggest things here, um, there's learning the setups, is learning, to read price and all that. But again, part of that learning process, which is what we're all about here, right? Getting better, is learning perhaps for many of you, for all of us, perhaps even a new way or a different way of thinking, questions to ask. If we see the market going, directionally, we can identify that through the OODA loop process. But in addition, we have to be constantly asking uh, the right type of questions. Good morning, Mark, or good afternoon to you, Mark. Mark's overseas. So again, part of this whole process here is to, get better at what we do, learn how to, ask the right questions. Of course, staying in alignment is paramount. All right, but it's an ongoing evolution. Maybe it's a revolution for some, but it's an evolution process, evolutionary process. So we work to become better and better, right, at what we do. I don't think we ever reach, the perfection stage. Um, I don't think ever. It's like perhaps playing golf, right? You get better at golf, and you could be at, the top of your game for yourself. But really, with golf, who are you competing against? I mean, yes, the majors and stuff, they compete against each other, but in all fairness, you're competing against yourself, right? The physical aspect, right? The mechanical, physical motions and so forth that you have to work on mastering. But again, it's also very mental, hugely mental. Well, maybe we don't have as the physical aspect of it here in trading, although it can manifest physically, by the way, stresses, right? So one of the ways to combat a lot of that stuff, right, is to stay healthy, eat right, exercise. You know what I'm talking about, right? So, but really, a lot of this is mental and takes an enormous amount of energy. And so, if you're not in good physical condition, the mental state can also suffer. So, it's best to, be sure that you are feeding your body good foods, wholesome foods, exercise, You know, you don't have to be, a weightlifter or marathon runner, but get some exercise, right? It's gonna help. Um, I have some kettlebells and things in my office, so, though most of the time I'm sitting down, a lot of the times I move my chair away and I start doing some exercises and stuff, while I'm watching the markets. So again, even in your office, you can do, you know, and some of you have these stand-up desks. I don't have a stand-up desk, but when I stand up, I can look at the top screen level of monitors. They're that high. While I'm sitting down, I have I got a neck brace looking at the upper monitors. So, anyways, all with that, good stuff. All right, let's get into today's action. Obviously, uh, we completed a 3-day cycle. The cycle, let me just quickly show you that. Let me bring in that spreadsheet. We talk about the cycle and so forth, right? But again, I show you how I monitor and track the sheets here. Okay, let me just expand. Here we go. Should be blown up pretty well. This last line right here, this was the most recent cycle, 5-6, completion of a 3-day cycle. And now these green checks, right? Somebody had asked me about what do the green checks and the X's stand for? What the green checks stand for in this column is that the cycle targets have been fulfilled. Cycle targets. Now, that's different than the 3-day cycle statistic. Want to make that perfectly clear. That was a question, right? So the idea here is on the 3-day cycle statistic, all right, that means here's the current statistic right now, 92.57, and that means that price, right, is greater than the cycle day 1 low, okay, on cycle day 3. So that's what that statistic stands for. This green, so what you'll find is there will be days where the statistic is satisfied, generating that percentage, but you may also on those days have in this column X's. All that means in the X's is the statistic was satisfied. Again, price being above the cycle day 1 on cycle day 3, but the targets had not been fulfilled. Does that mean it's a failed cycle? Not at all. So this also helps us determine at a glance whether or not cycle targets did get fulfilled. Okay, so just kind of to clarify what this column here represents. And then as you can see here, the past 2 cycles, essentially, even if, when I say 150% is a super cycle, I'm using that as a reference point. I could easily say 144.09% is a super cycle, right? If I said, well, anything above 125% is a super cycle. So keep that in mind where I'm just using it. Again, this is my own interpretation of what a super cycle is. Taylor in his original, development of the 3-day cycle never referred to super cycles. This is something I've created, right? So when you're that close, is it not a super cycle, right? You make the call, right? But of the past 2 here, 144, and then this past cycle, which ended yesterday, 162%. So again, even if you took an average of those, you know, you're right up there. So, plus or minus. Look at these super cycles here. So what does this all tell us? So if you were to just look at the spreadsheet without ever looking at the price markets, what could you conclude? Market's been in a tear. Market's been on an up tear, huge up tear. Okay. So again, something just wanted to update you guys, right, on the 3-day cycle statistics. It's funny because there are trolls out there. I cite some of these statistics out there, right, and I get comments back. It's all BS and so forth. So okay, you tell me if it's BS. I'm tracking everything, all right? I mean, in real time. So it's just a bunch of trolls out there in the world. You're never gonna get rid of them. So. Okay, so that said, we are starting a new cycle day one here today, and um, right now we get a overnight that's fairly narrow. We're sitting up near, when I say we, I'm always referring to price. I don't know why I say that. I should be saying price is, I always say we. We meaning price. But price is sitting up there near right up here at the prior highs. You can see that on various charts. As Libby pointed out earlier, price did tag the D level right up there at the penetration level as well. Cycle day one penetration level. We got a reverse. I think it was like 4 o'clock in the morning Eastern time. So you guys out overseas, Mark and others, you had potentially an opportunity to tag a short there against that D level for a rotation back lower. But I was in whatever dream state. I was in it around 4 o'clock, so obviously did not get that. But as you can see, as I mentioned in the chat here, is that markets never sleep. They're constantly moving around. All right, so always opportunities. All right, so today is cycle one. We did get the, again, push higher. All right, now what's our reference? All right, well, my line in the sand reference, by the way, uh, is the 85s, basically the close. All right, we did get a decline off of that overnight. So technically, cycle day one did produce a decline. Now, whether or not RTH will follow through and we get some sort of a deeper decline today, we'll all watch that happen, participate if and when that happens. Okay. So again, starting the day. Also, I read something, by the way. I don't know if anybody follows Carolyn Borodin. She's referred to as the Fibonacci Queen. By the way, I worked with her years back. Well, that's another conversation. But I do follow Carolyn's. She does excellent work when it comes to timing cycles and Fibonacci stuff. Anyways, she, according to her work, we're entering into a timing window for a possible high. All right, timing windows are not, that's a window. Okay, so I'll see if I can pull up her report. I think I have access to her report, but I'll pass that along. But and again, I think it starts tomorrow, 5/8. Yeah, yeah. You may want to look her up and see if I think she published something on X on that Carolyn Borodin, or Fibonacci Queen, or Fib Queen, or whatever her handle is these days. All right, but I did work with her years back, so really good stuff. Okay, like I said, relatively narrow overnight, sitting right here at the overnight high, or yesterday's high rather, and so that the 95. So uh, if price gets below that and kind of holds and fails to reclaim back above, again, that could set the stage for uh, some sort of a pullback. Targets from this point, from the prior high level or the 95s, would target the prior close and then the overnight low. Okay, so those are the two primary targets we'd be looking for on a short play against a break below these areas, the prior high, and a fail to recover above the prior high. Is that clear? Just as an idea, right? Just one of potential scenario. On the flip side scenario, if it holds in this area and then moves back above, right, and stays above and kind of flips the ATRs, right, the structure, then we'd be looking for some sort of a, a retest of the overnight high. So that's kind of where we are in terms of scenarios. All right, and which one's going to play out? We'll find out together. All right, so let's just stay loose. Cycle day one decline is an official decline, so it would go into the record books as a decline, not necessarily the average decline or a deep decline, but a decline. And right now, I'm just going to stay loose. Since I was out yesterday, I'm just going to kind of just be flexible here. Always be flexible in your decision making. All right. Be rigid on your following your plan, but certainly be flexible, in the decision making. All right. Follow your rules, your protocols, right? Very important that you do. I saw something also, just reading a lot this morning. I was up early. The largest notional call volumes. Did I get that right? Like 2 point something trillion of call buying recently that's out there. Some like monster gamma squeeze. All right, that's unfolded. Crazy stuff, right? Okay. All right, again, feel free to participate in the chat. I always like conversation, but stay focused. Again, if you're looking for a short play, right, up against the A10. Now, again, the A10 here did signal overnight, so it did touch the A10 zone overnight. So we're not going to get an auto X if it gets back up there. But if you're trading the A10 via the RTH session, then that would uh, qualify as a first touch during the RTH session. Though we won't get an auto X because that's not how this is configured here on the screen. But if you decide you wanted to trade that as a first touch, that would be valid idea. Would some profit taking be welcome? Yeah, I think there's some profit taking could be welcome. I mean, you gotta, some of these guys gotta take profit sometime, right? I'm not saying it's happening, gonna happen, but um, not looking, if it does decline, I'm not looking for certainly not looking for a rout in any way, unless of course the bombs start flowing overseas. But it doesn't seem to be the case. You got Trump, an upcoming meeting with Xi over there in China, so I don't think there's going to be any change in the current posture. So just carry on what we're doing. Okay. Yeah, we got crude oil on the long. We have that's on the opening range. Um, we have ES triggered short, and we're waiting for NQ to trigger. This is on the opening range trades. I don't have a lot to say there this morning. Typically I do, but I don't. It's interesting when prices get to kind of certain areas and levels. It's almost like the market doesn't know really what it wants to do now. Because a lot of these guys that are purchase these call options, like, okay, so they got call options going. So if the market doesn't continue higher, you know what's going to happen to those call options as time goes on. All right, current sandbox, if you want to outline the sandbox. Okay, as I mentioned at some point, you can always default the sandbox being the developing value area. Remember, a sandbox will always be changing. It's not, you know, think about it as more quicksand box. It's always going to be changing, but for now, roughly right here around the 90s. Again, it's always plus or minus, right? You can call it plus or minus 5 or so. And then up here near the 02s, 05s, 04s in that area. All right, so that's the current sandbox. But of course, as if a market decides to move lower, that sandbox is going to, move as well. All right. So again, always one of the questions is what is the current lean? The current lean right now is, everybody, favors as we see it, as it's unfolding. What does it favor? The sell side, all right? Sell side right now, okay? Yeah, it's just the lean, okay? Not saying that that's a trade yet, but right now it's the immediate lean. So in that case, we would be looking for bounces and then stalling and then looking for a pivot back lower. That's the sequence. Now, Can it just continue to drip lower? Yep. Remember, it can do whatever it wants to do. So we're just trying to, ask the proper question, uh, get an accurate type answer, and then so we can align ourselves and be prepared. Always doing the if then else conditional statement questions, right? So if this, then that. And all that matters right now is what's in front of us. Doesn't matter what happened yesterday any longer. Prior close was 86.75. I'm just highlighting some references here. You can see it on the screen there. It's close 86.75. All right, rotation down into that area. Obviously, we'd be looking for, a buy response. If no buy response, potential to, like I said earlier, to maybe retest the overnight low. Since we're below the prior high at the moment, if you're looking for a bullish play, that would be a reference price to get back above. That's the 95s. Staying below that, okay, we can continue to lean, to the short. VWAP is right around those 95s as well, 24-hour VWAP. So there you go. That's all the levels. That's where we are right now. Wait for your trade uh, structure, whatever that may be for yourselves. Again, it's all in alignment with PTG methodology, but not everybody's trading the exact same thing here at the exact same time. And finally, probing is always authorized. Probes. Probes are not scalps. Probes are just, all right, I'm just going to put one on and see what happens. But again, probing in direction. Think about a probe. Another way I've described a probe is a scout, right? Back in the Cowboys and Indians days, or even in any military setting, they send scouts out before the heavy artillery comes in and troops. So think about your probe as a scout, right? Unfortunately, sometimes the scouts get scalped, but it's just kind of, hey, let me put one out there. Let me see, kind of get a feel for it. Sometimes you don't get a feel for it unless you're out there with it with an actual trade. Watching is one thing. Putting a probe out there and being kind of in, on the field is another. But again, you only want to, put scouts out. Okay. All right. Coming down near the prior close. So we would at least anticipate some buyers, to step in and respond. All right, there's your prior close. Let's see what Mr. Market wants to do here. So that was one of our scenarios. And if you probe the scout, I don't know, should we use the term scout or probe? What do you like better? If you put out a scout somewhere in the fair value zone, right? Prior close area would certainly be a spot to take your scout off. You like scout or probe? We can make it an official term. Probe better? Okay. Coin toss. Yeah, coin toss. Well, coin tosses are always 50%, right? 50-50. But keep in mind, you're actually, in one sense, it's not 50-50 because we have a directional kind of influence, right? So, maybe the coin toss is a 60-40 or a 70-30 type of thing, right? But actual coin tosses, true, are 50-50. But we're trying to, handicap, you know, uh, kind of a directional move. A probe calls up Pamela. All right. So number one of my goals is to keep everybody on the proper side, whether you have a trade or not. Again, that's your choice, but got to keep you guys on the right side. Got to keep myself on the right side. So if we can get the right side proper, correct, that's a big part of the battle. All right, so officially now in the RTH session, we have a cycle day one normal decline. Why is that? Because price has declined below the prior low, some magnitude of a decline, okay, some magnitude of a decline below the prior low. So that qualifies for a cycle day one normal. Your AR10 is where, Steve? 73.85? Okay. I'm currently at 73.99. Okay, interesting. On my other screen, I have it at 98.50. All right, so it's all data driven. So I'm at 98.50 right now. So, and on our screen here, it says 73.99. Yeah, that's another, so remember what I do every day religiously now, it's just part of my routine. Took me a while, but I got it as a routine. I, at least in Sierra Chart, I delete and download all the data every morning. Jimbo's 810 is at 85.80. Yeah, okay, so I'm at 85. Wait a minute, you're at 85.80? Really? Wow. Oh, okay. Oh, you flip long. Oh, okay. You guys are long. Long. Uh, oh, okay. You guys are long flipped. Ah, okay. Do me a favor. If you're not in a trade, right? You guys have Sierra chart. Do me a favor. If you're not in a trade right now, if you're in a trade, don't do this. But if you're in a trade, go up to edit delete and download, delete all data and download, if you would. It'll only take a minute. If you're not in a trade, if you're managing something or whatever, don't. I want to see if by doing that on your side, it changes the A10. So let me know if anybody is doing that. So you guys flip to the long. I got it. Yeah, I'm still on the short. A lot of that perhaps might have to do with just, again, the data. And also, if you keep your computer running, sometimes the data can get stale or corrupted, which then affects future signals. So what I like to do on Sierra is every morning, once I shut down in the evening and I start up every morning, but just starting up in the morning may not necessarily refresh your data. I don't know that for a fact, but I'm assuming that it won't refresh. The only way to actually refresh it is to physically refresh it. So that's what I do. I go up to the edit, delete all data and download. It's not going to hurt anything. And then let me know if you guys do that. Let me know if you're still on the long side. And if you are still on the long side, then that's fine. It's just what it is on your side. Also, another thing you may want to check to validate and verify, go into your A10 settings here and make sure that the EMA period is 21, not 8. So check that. That could, if it's at 8, that could certainly flip the ATR sooner than what we have on our side. So EMA should equal 21 that we're using on that. All right, let me know if that changes for anybody. Ah, you're on 8. Okay, if you switch it to 21, are you back more in alignment with what I have here? By the way, if you find that if you're on 8 and you're getting decent trades out of it, okay, don't change it. I'm only asking because I thought something was off there in terms of data and so forth, right? But if you're on 8 and you're getting good trades out of it, yeah, don't change it. I mean, without a doubt. But if you find you're not, and you want to test out the 21 setting, then do that. The only difference that the 8 versus 21 is makes it more sensitive for the flip. Is it a compromise of 13? I haven't tested 13 in a long time. What you may want to do, Steve, just for testing purposes, is keep one on 8, keep one on 21, or maybe put another workspace, right? 8, 13, and 21, and just kind of compare them as the signals generate, right? To kind of do a little bit of a, you know, real time view, you know. But there's probably not a whole lot, significance, but it's something that you may want to, it's up to you to explore. It's just a sensitivity factor, you know. When the volatility, yeah, yeah, you can do that. When the volatility, kind of increases, um, sometimes you want to dampen the signals a little bit, and that's where the 21 comes in. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Dan is saying is, from his research, the 8 tends to be, you know, a little bit too flippy, a little bit too flippy. Okay, Oris, you must have on your 810. Do you have it? Go into the settings. Do you have it set to 8 on the EMA? I don't remember when I loaded it up whether or not you had an 8 or a 21 on the EMA. So just check the EMA. Just go into the settings and see what the EMA says for the A10. I'm using 21 on the EMA, so that's what you see on the screen. Yeah. So that's what I'm using. So if you just want to match up with what I'm having, that's fine. My screen just went dead. What happened? Ooh, I just got a power surge. My screens just went black. Now they're back. Okay, that's crazy. I had a power surge last night in the middle of the night. Just had another one. Yeah, there you go. Thank you, Dan. Yeah, there's Dan's, yeah. COVID seems like a distant memory. All right, so prices just right around that prior close. So right now, as anticipated, there are some buyers that, have stepped in. Not enough to flip it, not enough to turn it, but just just in this area. So if you were short from now those any probes that we mentioned earlier, again, into the prior close would be a natural place to at least, get risk free, take something off, you know, and then if you're still holding a position, you can just manage it. Now what's the lean? More neutral, right? Because it's found the low. Yeah, there you go. More neutral. All right, just trying to kind of keep it in your head, so this was a down lean, it reaches a level, kind of get a bounce and then come back and hold. All right, so then we got up here. So now, again, just kind of more neutral at this stage, right? So back to, observation, orientation mode in the ORDA loop. Um, yeah, you can extend the sandbox down. Yeah, yeah, you can extend it down to the lower side. That's what I'm saying. The value area hasn't changed, right? But if you wanted to extend the value, the sandbox from the value low here down to this pivot, that's absolutely fine, acceptable. Remember, the idea of the sandbox is just simply framing out the current action. So if the market expands a little bit to the down, to the up, you're just adjusting it to saying, okay, this is the current high-low range that that the market is working with. That's it. That's really all what the sandbox is. Don't, it's not anything, magical or anything. It's just trying to frame out, what the current, action is. So we anticipated buyers, right? So we anticipated buyers to step in around that close. Did they? Yes. Okay. Okay, great. Nice, John. Yeah. Yeah, the NQ over here on the left. Still rocking on. It NQ did come down and touch its close, right, and snapped right back up. There's a 1 minute on the left-hand side of the NQ. Yeah, I always recommend having NQ somewhere, you know, watching it if you're not actually trading it, but somewhere. All right, we'll see if we get back up here towards this A10. And for those of you that had an A10 long off of 85s, you actually had a trade. If you were running the 8 on the long side, you actually had a trade off of that. All right, we'll see if the Nasdaq's gonna just drag the ES. Remember, big names in the Nasdaq are in the ES, so that's why you gotta follow the NQ. So goes the NQ, so goes the market, as it's been often said. So we'll see if the A10 up here has any resilience. Actually, on your NQ, even if it's just on a 1 minute, notice what happened in NQ. I mean, this is past tense. I'm just observing here, right? Because I haven't been watching NQ that closely this way. But take a look at the opening range low on NQ at the 720s. What pattern could you identify there? We got price dipped down below that opening low. What did it do? It reclaimed it. What trade is that? Or trade structure? PKB. They're all over the place. I mean, if you're looking for them, right? They really are all over the place. And that's a 1 minute on the NQ. So, 1 minute is fine. I have no problem with 1 minutes time periods. But, again, you say, well, it's dipping below the low. Okay, so it's dipping below the low. Now, understand what I'm trying to get at, right now. It's observation orientation, decision action. So if you're observing and you're saying, okay, market's rotating down. This is on NQ, by the way, but it could be anyone. Prices are rotating down. It took out the opening low into the close, actually, but took out the opening low. What's your next set of questions? I'm going to leave it there. What would be your next set of questions? In this case, an observation, right, where it closed, went back to the close, right, prior close, just on the ES. But in the NQ's case, it actually dipped below the opening low. What would be the set of questions? What type of decision action cycle for a trade would you be thinking about? Okay, it's a rhetorical question, but again, more, again, this is the idea. Our theme today is about asking the right questions, right? Being in the moment, observing it in real time, asking, getting in alignment, but asking, a forward question. If price does X, then what would you expect in the Y? Y meaning the letter Y, not WHY. All right. This is where you need to get your head at when you're trading throughout the day, particularly in short-term trading like we are. All right. It's all about trying to, and by the way, all these questions or these example type questions, you ought to have been writing these down or to some variation of them so you can remember them or you can use them as a checklist. That's what's going to help lead you to, a decision on a potential trade, you know, setting up. Yes, it's always easier to do these things after the fact, knowing that what happened happened. I get that. It's not what we are. It's not what we try to do here. It's the idea of if you don't ask the proper questions in advance, if you don't ask the if then else, typically you're going to miss many types of trades, right? So again, it's all about developing the proper, we talk about developing mindset, right? You can do all the affirmations in the world, right? I used to do affirmations years back. Did they ever help me put on a trade? Not one time. What helped me was, well, if this happens, I'll enter here, or if that happens, or I'll put my stop there. Is it the trade structure that I want to trade, number one? Or am I just, wishful thinking at this level? I'm just going to try to jump on board. I mean, you get to need to know what your plan is and execute that plan, right? It's always easy to look back and say, wow, could have bought them there, could have sold them there. All right, back test of prior high in the ES. Back test of prior high. Is there something that you want to be paying attention to there? Again, rhetorical question. So just pointing things out so you're aware of, not only where we are, but what would you then be potentially looking for the price to do? Have a scenario. Create your, a dynamic scenario. Well, if it stalls at this prior high area, right, and then rolls back down and then shifts, could that be a play against the prior high? Have a dynamic scenario outlined. Do you want to buy it up into a test of the prior high? Or would you want to see a move above the prior high, maybe even take out the A10, get a shift bullish, that has more, meaning to it? Yes, we do have a small shift right here, but we're shifting back up into that area. So again, what would you want to be doing and looking for your play? All these questions are, you should always have, you know, an answer to what you're looking for. And then it's just a matter of waiting for it and constantly monitoring the market, you know, okay? Yeah, we got a little buy program here, a little buy and sell program just clicked off. I don't think you're gonna get a meaningful decline. in the market unless those those mag sevens, they start pulling the plug on those. You're just not going to get any real meaningful decline until then. Okay. Well, that little cell program got scooped up pretty quickly, so yep, we got non-farm payrolls tomorrow. It's usually a mover, it's usually a groover somewhere. You usually get a reaction, but I don't think it's going to be meaningful in terms of any read through for rates right now. But it will give us a metric, give us a datum for the strength of the economy. No question about that. All right, so our decision point here against the prior high in A10, NQ is still kind of nibbling to the new highs, new highs, new highs, new highs. When the next drop comes, it will be epic. It will be absolutely epic when the next crash comes. How about why is it nobody's talking about crashes anymore? All the naysayers. Yeah, we're all the naysayers. All right, so if again you got a tag of the A10 is what I mentioned here to you was the A10 is not going to show a signal here. All right, but if you're using the A10 for an RTH, it is a first touch of the A10 during the RTH session here. Okay. There you go, Steve. Okay, so your A10, you flipped it to the 21 and it matches what I have here. Okay, good. All right, so you're running 1.8, 121. Okay, let us know how that works out. See what the comparison is for over a period of time. Yeah, that'll be interesting to know what that is lately. All right, we need some rotation now. If you're on the short side here, stall it out and push it down. Come on. Buyers need to get filled first before it goes lower. All right, coming up on the first hourly high low initial balance. Generally, we get a reaction here. Right now, just looking at order flow, the buyers are still nibbling right here at the 97s. But if they can get filled, it won't take much for the market to at least drop back down deeper into the range, but they got to get filled first. So, all right at the 10:30 mark. Here's your ES opening range. Yeah, uh, it's a staged order right now. Yeah, we need some rotation, don't we? Yeah, we get just two-sided trade right here. So it could go either way. It's all about whatever the order flow is, at these levels. You get high volume nodes here, so you get some heavy two-sided trade, but just whatever they want to do. Just not getting the kind of that rotational action that we like, right? But this is what the institutional players are doing, right? So you know, they're finding levels, they're finding their liquidity. Yeah, definitely. You do definitely have some divergence here. All right, but the Nasdaq, it just keeps pumping money in there. But we'll see. All it takes is one sell pro. Oh, I just got a sell program just came in. I heard the frogs. Anybody else hear the frogs? Frogs is a sell program. Haven't heard a program for a while, so that when you get the audio, that means it's a larger sell program than it hit a certain threshold, but not really going anywhere. So, yeah, it's been quiet. Bust out the guitar. It's hanging on the wall. Just move. Rotate. Come on. All right, guys. I'm just going to take a short break, about 5-minute break, and I will be back. All right, guys, back with you. Looks as though the A10 there uh didn't really fully play out at all. All right, so if you play that, but again, remember, again, it's your choice in terms of the flip, right? So we go back over here. All right, the actual flip occurred during the overnight trade. All right, so this was the first touch during the RTH session. All right, so that's just an optional trade, whether or not you wanted to play that or not. But we do have an A10 now on the long side set up. So we'll see if the buyers are still active on any subsequent dip here that unfolds. And we got about 10 minutes remaining for this today's session on the recording. So let me know if you have any questions or everything's copacetic, everything's good. Bada bum bum bum. All right, so the next trade we are looking for, we get a pullback down to the 810 zone near the VWAP. It also is matches up really nice with the pivot zone over here. So that would be in the high volume node. All right, so that would be the area that we'd be looking for along here. But again, the market, that NASDAQ over here to the left just continues to be strong. Like I said, got to keep watching that NASDAQ. The NASDAQ. Hmm. Slow grind. Yeah, thanks, Dan. All right, that Dr. Dean, that ES did trigger now on the long side. That's on the opening range. Up, up and away in that beautiful balloon. It's a melt up market. Is what the first pullback? Well, you could, yeah, I mean, well, again, Ram, it all depends how you're defining how the first pullback for yourself in this case, right? In this case. So the question is this here a first pullback? Okay. And again, it all depends how you decide you're playing it, right? So in other words, if you're playing it where price needs to exceed the value high, which I'm assuming that's the case, okay, this would be your first pullback. Okay, so price exceeded the value high, all right, developing value high, right? So it could exceeded developing value high, you get a first pullback following that. So again, if you remember, if you're using that as your reference level, the value high, that would be your first pullback. It's not the first pullback of the ATR. Okay, that's over here. But if you're using, if you're staying on the sidelines until there's a move above the value high, which I'm assuming that is, am I correct with that? All right, if I'm correct with that, then yeah, okay, great. So if I'm correct with that, so what Ram is saying, is asking, is this here the first pullback? And it is if you're moving above the value high, you're looking for that pullback and then the continuation. So yes. So in that case, you would, certainly look to be taking that type of trade because it fits what you're looking for. Does everybody else follow along with that? What Ram was asking, does everybody understand that? It's a good question. Is that the first pullback? So if that's the way you defined it, yes. On the flip side, it could be a continuation pullback, right? So again, so the key here is what reference are you using to describe the first pullback for yourself? Okay, so as just mentioned, again, value high, that is clear the value high, first pullback, yes. If you're using value high level there as reference, okay? On the flip side, if you're still using A4 as reference, okay, this would be your first pullback here, and this would be what I would refer to as a continuation pullback, right? It did clear it cleared the next level, but it's a continuation of the ATR. So again, it's the same kind of structure, but how you define it and what action you take will determine. You're still aligned. There's no question we're still aligned to the upside. So that you mean the one down over here? Absolutely. So you're talking about this one here, right? Did I get the right time? No. You said near 89. Oh yeah, that's 89. So you're talking about this one, 89, 90ish area? Absolutely. That's still, remember, it's so what I don't, I think what's happening is when we're talking about a range, right? Whether or not you want to trade inside the range or outside the range, okay? This is really what I'm talking about. When it's sitting in the range and the price is trading right around the middle. Okay, let me just clarify that. When there's a range action, I don't want to be, if the, you know, let me just show you a little bit different. Let me expand upon this, right? So if the market's kind of in a range and you see the moving averages right here, right? The EMA is kind of in the middle, just kind of meandering around. I'm not interested in trading that, okay? Because there's no real defined slope of direction. Ron, do you follow? Everybody else? There's really no, okay. So this is what I'm talking about in terms of like in a range. I'm not saying never trade a range, all right? Or you can't take, a first pullback that's within the range. What I'm saying is when you're in a range and it's in the middle and everything's kind of flat, in this area here, I'm just not interested in taking it. There's no real edge. Now, as the market opened this morning, we were talking about probing shorts. Are you still within the range? Yes, but what's different here versus over here to the left? What's different? There's directional slope. There you go. Perfect answer. Ram's been doing his homework. There's directional slope. That's the difference. Are you still in kind of the range? Yes, but there is directional slope. Okay, so that's really kind of the key. Now, let's take one step further. Price moved out of that range. We were talking about the prior close in our scenario. And then what happened? Price stabilized and then it came back into the range. Well, what's the reference level? The reference level is, in this case, would be the value low. It didn't change, but price went down below that value low. So now what type of structure are we potentially considering, right? Remember, take a level, price goes down below it and reclaims it. What did price do here? Price went down and then reclaimed it, right? So in our scenario here, what could be the next play? A pullback following the reclamation. There you go, John South, Rom. Great, right? So a first pullback, right? So this technically would be the first pullback following the reclamation, the reclaiming of that value low. Though you're still in the middle somewhat of the range, but something has changed. We're not just sitting, meandering back and forth. That's what I talk about when we're in range. I'm not interested in trading range in the middle. Okay, now it makes sense. All right. So though technically we're still in the middle, it's not the same situation. It's not the same dynamic. All right. So they pushed down, they reclaimed it. All right. Now it's still somewhat slow action in the middle of the range, but you had a pullback. You had an again ATR, right? The A4. You had the EMAs now aligned. Again, everything's aligned here for longs, even though we're in the middle of the range again. Okay. So yes. So even in here, okay, and of course, we have the benefit of seeing what happened afterwards. But even if we were right here, the question, if we were right here on the right-hand side, after seeing everything that had occurred, could we take a long in here in the middle now? If it's part of that plan, you could say, yeah, I can take a long. My stop would be, max stop would be below this low, but you could have even perhaps even a tighter stop, but you could play that as a long, because of the dynamic when price pushed below a key level, value low, reclaimed it, and then we're not seeing any more sellers going back to try to push it back lower, do we? Right? You can see that it's, even in here, it's all holding. What does that what does that tell us? It doesn't tell us we're breaking out above the value high, because that, of course, has not happened at that point in time. But what does it tell us? Again, going back to the OTA loop, observation orientation. Yep, there's some strength. The buyers are back after pushing it below the low, testing the prior close, reclaiming above that, and buyers are back. And yes, there's a lot of two-sided trade going on, but the buyers still have dominant control. All right. So then what do you do? All right. What's your decision? Well, you can wait for the move above the value high and then look to take that first pullback for a continuation even further. And was that a viable play? Absolutely. So if you waited for that as part of your plan, you did absolutely what you wanted to do. Okay. Had you decided to take, the one within the range, nothing wrong with that either. So you had some decisions again in terms of your OTA loop, right? Observation orientation, and then going through the decision action cycle. You had a number of actionable decisions to make in this whole kind of structure as it is unfolding, right? Good. All right. So Ram says trying to get very specific on my trade plan, and this clarifies. Yeah, I know my comments about range can, you know, uh, I hate to have anything misleading because it's just, you know, um, but for the most part, yeah, for the most part, uh, I like to, when I'm looking at range, this would be an ideal, kind of play where it pops below and then reclaims back in, right? But this area here, this was early in this morning. This was actually very, very early going into the opening. All right. So we wouldn't have played that anyways, but for example, that's the type of area where I would not be looking to play a range. But as long as there's some slope direction, it's viable to play. Okay. So now you're getting a pullback. Are you getting yeah. So you're getting a discount play. All right. Yeah, this would be a discount extreme. Now what you'd be looking for, right? So you'd want to see this come up and hold again. You want to see it to build some reason. right? So on a discount extreme, right, if you're looking for that extreme, you could enter fairly immediately with a tight stop below that low, okay? But in terms of playing this again, I'd want to see, I want to see some structure being continuously built right now going forward, okay? Yeah, the A floor flipped. That's okay. You it's not a deal breaker, but it is caution, caution note that if you're playing the long and price comes back up, to the A4 level, well, you're near the prior high anyways, right? So if you took a long right in here, right now, and you didn't get stopped out, and it starts moving higher, where are you putting your exits? Where are you putting your take profit? I'm going to be putting them very, very close to that A4 or that high volume node. That's where you're going to put them, right? So it's not a deal breaker from taking a trade on the long side, on this deep pullback. It's not a deal breaker. It's just that the A4 now, right? If you get to move back up to retest that high, I'm going to be using that area as take profit, right? All right, good question, Rom. Very good. Yep. Thank you, Mark. All right, I'm going to end the stream here for the day, and we'll get it rendered up, get it up on the website, and we'll be back with everybody again for Freaky Friday. Non-farm payrolls Friday tomorrow.